Hi, hello, and welcome back to the HII Method. My name is Jen Hatz. I am the host of the HII Method podcast and also the founder of the HII Method, a holistic, integrative, and innovative approach to assessing and optimizing human health, well-being, and performance. And I'm partnered with Neuroforce One, a human performance company that has been training champions for years, and they offer training and assessments in their facility as well as remote options available. And a topic that I am getting so jazzed to share, really, because it's so intricate and there's so much that I think has been unknown and undiscovered until now, and it's all coming out now. And it's this topic not only around gut health specifically, but the various ways in which our gut health can impact the rest of us, the rest of our physical health and the rest of our mental health. And so a lot of what I talk about and what I focus on, especially within my research, is not only your brain health, like I mentioned with the big three for your brain, but also specifically that gut-brain connection and how your gut is impacting the big three with your brain health and your overall mental health. So as a reminder, those big three are to prioritize sleep, to deprioritize or limit or eliminate alcohol, and also to regulate your blood glucose. So those being the top three areas that I've found to be most beneficial for protecting your brain health and therefore your mental health as well. But also the tie-in with your gut-brain connection and the role that the gut plays across these different areas. So this is a real big, not only is it a big topic to me, but it's also the primary emphasis for my research specifically is looking at this entire holistic model of how our brain and our body functions together synergistically, and also how that translates to all of the functions of us, whether it's our physical health, our physical output, or our mental health, our psychological experience of life, our overall mental processing and emotional regulation. And so all of these different areas have this unique connection with this gut-brain connection. And so something that I want to talk about really specifically today, though, is on the effects that your gut health has on hormones and the different ways in which your gut can impact hormones, different types of hormones in different ways. So there's kind of three main ways in which your gut can impact hormones that I'm going to look at today. And that's specifically on helping to regulate your hormones that are circulating, helping to stimulate hormone signaling, really helping to signal and stimulate hormones that need to communicate in some way from one to another, and also with your gut's own synthesis and production of hormones. So the cool kind of things about these three, so when I talk about regulating your hormones, so your gut plays a role in not only when you eat food, you are, digesting food, but you're also taking any waste products from your entire body, all of those different cells and waste byproducts that are accumulating from your normal day-to-day functioning is all coming back to this food mass that is moving through your GI tract, and that waste is going to be removed from your body. And so this plays an important role in regulating what is actually circulating and active within your body, because you can't just consume and take in and have everything there and then it just stays there. You have to be able to remove what is no longer needed in order to have, think of it like this, having the space available, having the resources available to be able to continue to take on the new stuff coming in. So if you want to think of it as like that literal example of creating space, but in a way, you're also helping to regulate the overall production of hormones, in this case, like we're talking about hormones. And because of this concept of removing what is no longer needed, that can help to stimulate what is in fact needed. So there's this entire cycling, this entire feedback loop that happens because the gut is playing a role in helping to remove what is no longer needed. And so a very specific example of this when it comes to hormones are your sex hormones of estrogen and testosterone. Specifically, estrogen has been shown to be increased and excessive. It'll accumulate and circulate in excessive amounts when there are, we'll say, dysfunctions or imbalances within gut health that are depleting your ability to effectively remove this estrogen from circulation. So otherwise, this estrogen would normally, you would produce estrogen in the proper amounts under right conditions. And as you are no longer, as the cell itself, think of it like this, when the cell itself is no longer active, you no longer need it to be circulating. And so you can remove it. And so it would move into your GI tract and be released from your body through your waste products that are being removed from your body as well. So when there's a dysfunction or an imbalance with your gut health, impacting the way that you are, in this case, removing these waste products from your body, they instead accumulate. And you start to have this excessive accumulation of some of these different cells. And in this case, with a hormone, having excessive accumulation of a hormone building up can not only decrease your natural production of that hormone, so it can interfere with your own estrogen production, but it can also increase your risk for different cancers and different cancer cell formation, because you have this increased circulating and increased just overall concentration, we'll say, of these cells, whether they are active or inactive. And having that accumulating is increasing your risk for all varieties of cancers, but also that specific type of cancer, and this type, like estrogen-specific cancers, you'll be at an increased risk because of this. So this has been seen in even situations of PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, where there's this we'll say imbalance with estrogen production and balancing is very closely linked with gut health and with poor gut health. And so it's interesting to see that there could be a very clear line of action for us to take with protecting our gut health and making sure that we are taking in what we need and removing what we don't need, so that way we have this proper cycling and this proper feedback loop that is being protected and maintained for the sake of our hormonal functioning. So that's a very cool kind of angle to what our gut can do for us when it comes to our overall endocrine functioning. Now, another thing that our gut can do, as I mentioned, is with hormone signaling. So your gut has this, it has a lot of unique properties, one of them being the fact that you have this gut lining, this mucosal lining. And within your gut lining, you have these specific hormones that are there within the gut. These are specific peptide hormones called glucagon-like peptides, 1 and 2. So there's GLP-1 and GLP-2. These peptides, as you eat food and you are digesting food, and when those food components that become exposed to the gut lining, when there's this interaction between the food you ate and the actual lining of your gut, this triggers these these glucagon-like peptides, to signal and communicate to the pancreas to release insulin. So the reason why you release insulin in response to eating food is because of this interaction that is happening within the gut, and specifically within the gut lining, this very particular location where this very particular hormone is active and taking place and able to signal to an entirely different part of the body this communication in order to help overall, so that way you can regulate your blood glucose. So this is an extremely important, I'll say, like added thing to make note of the fact that regulating your blood glucose requires you to have appropriate gut health maintained, and that your gut mucosal lining is intact, and that you have this hormone functioning from your gut mucosal lining in order to then help your pancreas secrete insulin appropriately. Like the steps that it takes in order for us to regulate our blood glucose is so much more intricate than what we may have been led to believe. And so this gives us, if anything, a sense of more, I would say, more direction and feeling more empowered to take on certain dietary practices and certain lifestyle factors that are going to protect our gut health and protect that mucosal lining. And also knowing now that we can identify certain biomarkers to identify the state of our gut lining, to identify whether or not we do have this hormonal signaling happening appropriately, so that way we can potentially prevent or treat anything that is happening within our overall insulin signaling, or insulin production, and our overall blood glucose maintenance and ability to maintain stable blood glucose concentrations. So all of this, again, because of the gut being that critical factor in this entire series of steps that it takes from what we eat to how we absorb and use what we eat. So very cool thing about the gut in that standpoint. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is the fact that your gut also it synthesizes and produces its own hormones. Now, when I say its own hormones, this is the interesting thing. So your gut has, I'll start first. You may have heard that your gut produces more serotonin than your brain, that the majority of the serotonin that is produced within your body is produced in your gut, and that is true. Now, serotonin is a neurotransmitter, and there is serotonin that is produced in your brain, and that pretty much stays within your brain. And then the serotonin that is produced within your gut pretty much stays within your gut, or it has actions across your body, but very little, if none, interaction between what is produced in your gut and what is produced and what is then taken action in your brain, because you have the blood-brain barrier. And that is acting as a very particular barrier to keep separate things from crossing over into the very precious tissue of your brain, and instead keeping things in the body that are meant for the body. So this blood-brain barrier is very important to keep this regulation of what we are producing in different areas and what we are then using in different areas. So in this case, with this serotonin neurotransmitter being produced, in your brain and also very largely within your gut, serotonin is a precursor for melatonin. So it actually converts into melatonin, and melatonin is a hormone that we have known now, we've become aware of its effects with helping and promoting sleep. And that there's this very important role it plays with not only promoting sleep, but also with helping to antagonize our stress hormones, specifically cortisol. So you may have seen some things out there about how, well, first of all, you may have seen a lot of things about cortisol and the overall, I'll say the overall trend of looking at cortisol as this alarming sign of a stress response. And that's not necessarily true or false. It's not necessarily accurate or inaccurate. What it is, it's a stress hormone that is being activated and produced in response to stress. And so I'm going to get into stress on an entirely different episode, so we're not going to go there right now. But just understand that there is this antagonistic kind of relationship. It's a partnership. They bounce back and forth between cortisol and melatonin. So cortisol naturally elevates during the day, especially when there is light that is present, whether it's, natural light and especially the blue wavelengths of light, or even artificial light. As long as there's light, it's activating this cortisol. And then once there's an absence of light, or when the wavelengths change from blue to more of the oranges and ambers, that's when the cortisol is lowered, and instead you're starting to increase melatonin production. And so melatonin production is prioritized during nighttime at, when there is an absence of light, and it's helping to promote sleep overall. And so a lot of the research on melatonin, this is the interesting thing, has been on the role that the melatonin that is produced in your brain plays on your sleep, and how this impact of light has this trigger, basically this direct relationship with light exposure and your melatonin production through the pineal gland within your brain. So that's become a very major focal point when it comes to sleep and melatonin. But here's the cool thing. So your gut also does the same thing with converting serotonin to melatonin. So you have a far larger amount of melatonin being produced within your gut than you do within your brain. And this melatonin that's being produced within your gut has very particular actions that are potentially similar, but also different to the melatonin that is having actions in your brain when it comes to your sleep. So the melatonin in your gut bacteria have this real unique relationship with melatonin. And so your gut bacteria have receptor sites for melatonin to bind to. And when that happens, when melatonin binds to these receptor sites on the bacteria, it influences their behavior in a good way. They become much more healthy and beneficial bacteria, and they give off beneficial byproducts like short-chain fatty acids. And they begin to start, we'll say, balancing out your overall inflammatory response, especially within your gut. Any kind of gut inflammation starts to become balanced out. And so the melatonin within your gut is not only helping to satisfy the needs of the bacteria, so that the bacteria are behaving appropriately for us, the host, who are hosting this bacteria, but there's also this unique, I'll say, added effect where melatonin acts as a very strong antioxidant and helps to reduce oxidative stress as well. And this can also be not just oxidative stress within the body, within the gut, but also for the brain. So this is a unique thing where the melatonin being produced within the gut has not only actions within the gut, within the body, but could potentially have actions within the brain. So this is why I'm going to bring this whole topic full circle here, that the gut-brain connection may have far more intricacies and layers to it than we've ever known. And this is such an exciting thing because it means that there's that much more to discover about how our bodies and brains function together, and no longer viewing everything as siloed and separate, but instead viewing everything as completely holistic, complete as is, but completely whole in how everything functions together because it's functioning together. Nothing is ever going to function separately as its own thing. And I think that is the most, if anything, the most encouraging side of this, because it means that even if there are some questions that are left unanswered, if there's something that is maybe a lingering problem somewhere, that there's always a way to find an answer because there's always a connection to something else. Super cool topic. So let me know, drop a comment below if you learned something new about this topic. And if you are interested in learning more about this topic, then absolutely subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to be sharing all of the research that I'm able to share, that I'm allowed to share. I will be sharing it through this podcast here. So this will be the platform to learn more about that topic specifically, and all the other topics that I talk about too. This platform is specific for all of this research and the different ways in which this research can help you, because that's really, at the end of the day, all that matters. So drop a comment below if you learned something new. Otherwise, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe so we can spread the love and spread the like. Thank you. Bye-bye.